To the extent that you lead a purely mechanical life, a consumerist life, you are bound to be negative. There is no escape from that. So spirituality or spiritual traditions are given to us in order to liberate us from the world of negativity and to lead us into the freedom of being positive. Yes.
Good evening, sir. My name is Dimpy. Sir, my question is that you told that regarding personality, you told that a quality of thinking matters. So, sir, when we go for some interview, their personality matters a lot. And, sir, there what is basically what I've heard is demanded your original thinking, your quality of thinking. So, sir, how far we can pursue or convince the second person with our views or our original thinking? And my second question is that is it really possible that the person will get convinced with our thinking?
Thank you. As someone who has interviewed thousands and thousands of people, I can tell you one thing. From the very first sentence, it's clear to the person who interviews you whether you are a thinking person or not. The foremost quality I would look for a person, look in a person, is the capacity to think. Secondly, if you have developed this capacity, it will be immediately reflected in the quality of your expression. It's not at all difficult to find out. The very structure of your sentence will indicate it. The way you pronounce a word will indicate it. The level of confidence that you exude, even without knowing it. You see, the person who is interviewing you is all the time not listening to your answers only. He is also responding to the quality of your being. And it's a very profound experience. That is, if a person is taking interviewers seriously. If results are decided prior to the interviews, is a different matter. If somebody is conducting interviews in order to take the best, then it is happening all the time. It's a very wonderful experience. So, what you have to worry, or not worry, what you have to emphasize is not whether the person sitting there is impressed or not. It is whether or not you are or have been able to be fully yourself. Because after all, interview means looking into. Right? Now, when somebody looks into you, what does that person find? A barren land? Or a garden blooming with flowers? Teeming with flowers? What will that person find? So now, there is a difference today, and that is, in the modern understanding of personality, personality is understood almost entirely as a mask. Because after all, that is the origin of the word personality. From the Latin root persona, which means a mask. So in public life, we are always wearing a mask. So we speak in a certain fashion. We choose our diction, the kind of words we use, construct our sentences, and so on and so forth. But if you are informal, casual, at home, maybe we will not talk in this manner. The quality of communication may be diluted. That's very likely. So, the ancient or spiritual understanding of personality was different. It was not a persona. It was not a mask that you wore. It was who you are. And a person who takes the interview process seriously will pay attention to this. Because we all know that young people attend these coaching centers where they are trained to conduct themselves in a fashion at the interview. We all know this. What will disappoint me personally, I can't say speak for others, what will definitely disappoint me is the people I interview conducting themselves in a stylized, stereotypical, coached fashion. Because then I am not interviewing this person, I am not interviewing with a human being. I am interviewing with a coaching center. You understand? It doesn't impress anyone. You must enrich your thinking, your imagination, your feeling, your repertoire of ideas, your capacity to think, and that will take care of everything. Also pay attention to the quality of communication. There, as I said before, writing is very important. Writing is an art of perfection. It clarifies many things. By the way, in an interview, clarity is the decisive thing. If I find somebody is beating about the bush, I'll switch off. I know this person is trying to be clever and trying to take me for a ride. Okay? So be sincere. If you cannot answer a question, say, I'm sorry, I don't know, that's fine. Right? Because if you're trying to beat about the bush, you'll irritate the people sitting there. Right? But I don't want to run a coaching camp on. Any other?
Yeah, sir. This is essentially about how you said in the end, go to the past. This is about reconciling the past with the future through the present. Because if we really look at it, this argument about yesterday was better and tomorrow is not going to be, is seen as something that stands in the way of change, which is generally considered a constant. Evolving is supposed to be our duty, you know. So there is a way around it. Even your Descartes quotation is actually, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. So my question is, how do we reconcile this? It is understood, because some of the pace and some of the ways in which we behave are due to the way things are today. We don't write letters because there are emails and messages. You know, we used to write emails, then they became whatever, then now they've become WhatsApp messages. So this is the way life moves. So how do you bring the qualitative quotient into change? Normally we stumble into tomorrow, and then we kind of break up some things, then we come to a middle, then we again stumble into another tomorrow. So how do you bring this qualitative quotient into the change which is inevitable and constant?
All right. Okay. There are two temptations that every human being faces as relevant to your question. First is the temptation to be nostalgic about a golden past. So regression, going back. The other is the temptation to escape into a paradisical utopia in the future. The problem with both is the same. That is, the reluctance to be rooted in the present. Our opportunity to progress, to grow, to think, to contribute is only in the present. But the present is not sealed off from the past or future. The present is almost like the fulcrum on which the past and the present hinge, or find their balance. That's why in the course of my presentation today I said, we cannot, in the name of progress or modernity, forget all the achievements in the past and reject the fact that we are the beneficiaries of and we are empowered by all the activities, the struggles, the breakthroughs in the past. So there is a continuity. At the same time, we cannot dilute our responsibilities in the present, waiting for a convenient, comfortable, great time to come. This is a mistake committed by most people. Most people are waiting for something to happen. This is why, especially in modern times, several people, several writers, have been emphasizing the importance of the now. There's a book titled The Power of Now, so on and so forth. The New New Age spirituality or what, New Age consciousness is to some extent built on this, which is acceptable to me. I don't have any problem with that. And I believe that's the right attitude. But in living fully in the present, and that's where New Age consciousness goes wrong. In living fully in the present, I need the past. I also must maintain unwaveringly a sense of responsibility to the future. For example, when we look at the environment crisis, we say we are borrowing the future from our grandchildren. When? Not in the past. We are doing it today. We are referring to our lifestyle and our strategies today, in the present. So when I live in the present, I'm actually synthesizing the two contraries, the past and the future. That's life strategy at any rate. So progress should be understood aright. Now, this can be done only if there is an intuition of the whole. Now, for example, if I think of myself as, like Epicureans, eat, drink, and be merry, tomorrow you may die. That is complete renunciation of your responsibility concerning tomorrow, and total oblivion to the past. So any philosophy of life which is built on indulgence or pleasure seeking will always get obsessed with the present. Now, the present is only a part of the sequence of time. It's only 1/3, as it were. Actually, it is the smallest part of the sequence of time. The smallest. So, in order to make sense of the presence, we need to hold it in balance with the past and the future. Now, if you don't do this, either you waste the present, or you renounce the past, or you make the future a barren territory. That's how we defeat ourselves. Leading a meaningful life is not an easy thing, but it's a possible thing. That is where we need a lot of training, experiences like this, where sit together, learn collectively, give to each other the benefit of our experiences and our thinking. So it's possible. It's possible to incrementally enhance the quality of your life when all these things will fall in place. Now, if you seek a formula where these things are placed in a mathematical fashion, geometrical fashion, past here, present there, future there. No, I think that all of these things coexist in human consciousness. For example, when you have to take a decision, you will invariably take the decision in terms of A, your past experiences, B, the past experiences of others that you know of, C, the kind of reading you would have done, quality of your thinking, all this comes into, and you would also keep an eye on the future. What are the consequences? So at no stage in life, in no experience of a person, is any part of the three dimensions of time absent or can be kept out of. Okay?
So that's absolutely fine. So in the context of, let's say, the traditionalist, we find a lot of them today in society who say that yesterday was, infinitely better, so we should go back to yesterday and that should be it. So, it's very difficult if we make that argument, and I'm unable to find an appropriate counter which within his argument, will, implant my consciousness. That's the question. There are a lot of people who say that our past values were fantastic. Sure, they were. And, even if you talk about values, there was a justification for burning Joan of Arc when she was burnt. There were a lot of people standing around applauding Christ as he was crucified. So the value systems many times is visible in the future when you look back at the past. So reconciling this and talking to a traditionalist and saying that is all very well, but this is the way we need to move forward, keeping in mind that, how does that argument get made?
I don't think it's a difficult issue at all, because whether it is the craving of the orthodoxy, the nostalgia of the orthodoxy for a vanished past, or the dreaming of the dream for a resplendent future, both are escapist strategies. Escapist strategies. What life requires of us is not escapism but engagement. Engagement is possible only in the present. You cannot go back and live something, but you can live the present, avoiding the mistakes of the past, or benefit from the wisdom of the past. That's possible. But you cannot go back in time and live, say, in 2006. So, the traditionalists are people very often who have not developed a life strategy that is adequate for the requirement of the present. As I said, the superstructure changes. For example, if you remember, I remember when my house, a little house in Kerala, was electrified, the connections, the wiring was so rudimentary that if a fuse blew up, I could attend to it myself. And you have to tie the fuse and all that. Now today you live in a multi-storied apartment, set of apartments. If the fuse blows up, you don't know what to do. So from that experience you would say, oh, life has become very complicated. No, life has not become complicated. The means of life have become complicated. Circumstances, the milieu has become complicated. People are very confused on this. So, the kind of moral superiority that the spokesperson of orthodoxy claims about life in the past was largely a matter of not having opportunities for immorality. Not for having opportunities for immorality. Today, the social inhibition is gone. Life is much more exposed. Mobility has increased. Connectivity has increased. All walls have been breached. So the traditional barriers, hindrances, inhibitions are all gone. Therefore, there is more explicit immorality today. In the past, there was hidden implicit immorality. That's why, since you quoted Jesus, Jesus says, I say to you, not only, you have heard this said by them of old times, that those who commit adultery must be stoned to death and all that. He says, but I say unto you, if a man looks at a woman with an unclean heart, he has already committed adultery with her. Meaning, not committing adultery for want of an opportunity because of strict social sanctions is not enough. Your morality, your character is proved when, in spite of having opportunities, you say, I will not do it. That is the proof of character. So this is something that the mere advocates of orthodoxy don't factor into their discourse. So I don't believe really that the present generation is more wicked than ours is. On the other hand, I would say that the present generation is more honest. They're less hypocritical. We were a hypocritical generation. We never spoke our mind. We led a subterranean life. This generation is not like that. Okay? They will tell you to your face. I think that's a lot better. So, at the same time, it's also a fact that in the present way of life, great many things which are of great value, the mainstays of life, are also gone. That's a fact. So we have to take a balanced view of things. What is our aim? We have to fix our aim first. Our aim is neither to glorify or denigrate the past, nor to glorify the future. Our aim is to lead a meaningful, fruitful, dignified life. That's our aim. And with that aim will tell us what to do with the present, what to do with the past, what to do with the future. If you don't have that aim, and if you're just drifting or sleeping through life, then it doesn't make any difference either way. Right? Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
I think one wondering and engaging with Monica on this. How do we as a group gain some legitimacy outside now that we have completed so many months here? We need to sort of get our causes laid out. We need to work towards something. And this is something that we've all been wondering about. And I was also wondering, Mark has guessed that is our future at Jantar Mantar, are we going to fast unto death? Is that our future?
No, we'll fast into life. Now, what is our identity? What's our future? Good question. I'm glad you asked this question. I think the future is this, that each one of us, having had now time to be part of a thinking group, goes back to our own life world and imparts that flavor to a few more lives. If infection can spread, why not enlightenment? You understand? We don't have to stay together as a group. It's not possible. But this group has enriched us. We've gained something. And that something, you remember I gave you a definition of gift. I said gift is something that necessarily originates outside of you, comes into you, but not to stay with you as your personal possession, but to leave you, flow out of you, to irrigate life, enrich life around. If that pattern can be maintained, I think our coming together will prove to be lifelong blessing. I'm an optimist in this manner. And in many of you I see that motivate. The very fact that you asked this question is music to my ears. Amartya. You can form a group. Even after this group disperses, you have email IDs of everyone, right? It just form small groups, manageable groups of 10 each, and see how to encourage each other and support each other in this mission to reach out to others.
May we speak with you or
We can do that. We can do that. But one of the principles I must practice is to render myself redundant. You know why? Otherwise you will not develop your initiative. Seriously. It's not that I don't have time. Time is the only thing I have. I have plenty of time. But I would like you to, because all of you are very wonderfully talented people, you have great concern, and you must develop confidence. I tell you, the interactive sessions I've had so far with you, each one of them has encouraged me and given me a lot of hope. So you have it in you to do this. But form small groups, then strike out. It's only by striking out that we grow. And I look back some 30 years in my life, I was such a timid, tentative beginner. Each time, my heart went pit-a-pat. How will I do this? But each time I pushed myself forward because I had a great thirst to give something. That's the only thing I had. Infinite happiness in imparting something. And that carried me through so far. And that all of you have. And if you can just support each other, miracles will happen. That's my faith. Now let me listen to...
I'm keeping my question very brief. How the development of emotional intelligence contributes to positive thinking, and how one should...
I can't. Keep a little away from you.
And how one should refrain...
First part onwards. How?
How the development of emotional intelligence...
Emotional intelligence. All right.
...contributes to positive thinking, and how one should refrain from going into this vicious circle of delusion in order to tackle failures and depression due to past experiences that may hinder future action.
Good. Our friend Amartya has the habit of squeezing 10 questions in a sentence. Now, the question of emotional intelligence I actually dealt with without mentioning it when I was talking about creative or original thinking as a whole person thinking or whole being thinking. Remember, last week I made certain comments on thinking only as the activity of the left brain. And I said that that's a total mockery of things. True thinking is something in which, in my opinion, the whole being participates. The richer you are in your imaginative, emotional development, the more endowed you are in your capacity to think. Any form of deprivation is unhelpful. Simple logic. Now, for example, there is a shallow, silly notion prevalent particularly among children who come through public school education, that the inability to speak their mother tongue is a great achievement. This is stupid to the nth degree. What the scientific truth is that the more languages you know, the more developed you are. Your brain, even your brain. Certainly your imagination. There are times I wish I had a proper grounding in Greek and Latin. Because many of the words we use in the English language are of Greek Latin origin. Many of the words we use in Malayalam are of Sanskrit origin. Now, if I know Sanskrit, my experience of the language would be very different. If I had really a grounding in Greek and Latin, my experience of ideas, situations, etc., in the English language would have been different. So likewise, anyone who wants to develop a capacity for creative thinking, original thinking, has to become as complete a person as possible, and we are certainly incomplete without our emotional equipment. In fact, various studies on management in the American context have repeatedly proved that because of the current management model, we are not producing good managers. And what is the foremost lacuna in the managers and executives of our times? They're abysmally poor emotional development. There's a famous study which Eric Fromm quotes in the book An Anatomy of Human Destructiveness, which involves studying 256 top business executives of the United States. And the study came to the conclusion that only 5% of the executives studied had normal emotional growth. Normal. So these are all the unfortunate results of the various models that we embrace, keeping certain goals in mind. For example, ruthless efficiency. There is an assumption that this ruthless efficiency may be interfered with if a person is compassionate. Now, if a person is not compassionate, that person is not passionate also. If that person is not passionate, how will he actually take extreme enthusiasm or adequate enthusiasm in the work that he does? He'll work like a robot. So, when we aim at something, we lose something in the process. So now the thinking has changed completely. Do you know that several top companies in the United States invite gurus from India to conduct sessions in transcendental meditation, vipassana meditation, yoga classes at companies' expense because they have realized that this will not work. So that is as far as your emotional intelligence part is concerned. What was the second part?
One one should refrain from delusion.
All right. See, delusions are nothing in themselves. Delusions are what rush into the vacuum that we create. And that vacuum is created by delinking ourselves from the world of reality. Who are the people who live in delusions? Those who have no concern for the world of reality or realities around them. Now, there is no vacuum in nature or life. You can either fill your life with what is real or fill the vacuum resulting from the absence of realities with all kinds of delusions and illusions. This is what is called living in a dream world. And as I pointed out right at the outset, if you look at advertising today, advertising is really not selling products, they're selling dreams. Because it's not a commodity that people need anymore, it is dreams. So, if you have this cell phone, you will be drifting in the interplanetary space, you will be, dimag ki batti jalayega, ye karega, wo karega. Now, it's all complete nonsense. Or you use this washing powder and suddenly the whole world looks at you. Is it meant to be true? Does anyone expect you to believe this? Or in olden days, a cine star, a lady will come and say, "Oh, Lux is the secret of my beauty." Now, she would never have touched Lux in all her life. Now, all these things, they're selling dreams. Now, if it is not reality dreams, what else do you have? So the only antidote to living the life of a lotus eater, life of an addict to dreams, is coming out of that world. There is a famous simile that Plato uses in the Republic. Perhaps there is no simile more famous than this in the whole of Western literature. So it's perhaps good for me to share that with you. It's called the simile of the cave. Now, simile of the cave is a depiction of human condition. Plato says people are living in this manner. How? They're living in a dark underworld cave, completely cut off from the world above ground. Where the sun shines, there is light, the objects can be distinguished. Here, people are sitting facing a wall. Behind them, there is fire burning, casting light forward. Between them and the burning fire, there is a road-like structure, a bridge-like structure, on which objects, people pass. So a shadow is cast on the wall in front. So people sitting there are fixed. They cannot turn left or right. They can only sit like this. So they think that the world is only this world of flitting, passing shadows. One day, somebody from the world outside comes, breaks the chain of one of them, and painfully leads the person up the stairs to the world of light. It's a very traumatic experience for him. He's most reluctant to come out, because if your eyes are attuned only to darkness, seeing light will hurt your eyes. But anyway, with great difficulty, this person takes one of the inmates of this dungeon and initially he is dazed, and slowly his eyes get adjusted, and finally he begins to recognize human beings, trees, animals, and he realizes, wow, what a difference. Now the dilemma is, what shall I do? Now that I have seen the true world, how can I go back to the old world of shadows? But the thing is that insofar as your fellow human beings are languishing in that cave of shadows, you have to go back as an instrument or an agent of enlightenment. So this is more or less, perhaps the simile will give you an answer to your question, right? Either it is the world of shadows, where only illusions and delusions flourish, or it is the world of reality, for which you have to leave the world of shadows, I mean, you can't have the best of both worlds. And encounter reality in the raw. It's a painful experience. This is the reason why many people desist from doing so. Many people are unhappy to be liberated. Many people are reluctant to be helped. Many people are utterly unwilling to be enlightened because they experience it only as a traumatic experience. Okay? So it is not merely a question of someone wanting to do it or not wanting to do it. It's also a question of whether or not an individual is willing to accept this kind of shift, change, transformation. Okay? That. Over there.
Good evening, sir. We have been talking about art of thinking and then need to see the inner and the outer world and the balance between the two. So a question comes to my mind about the value of acknowledgement.
Yes.
What is the role of acknowledgement as a value in the art of thinking as a holistic process? This is my question, sir.
See, acknowledgement is largely a matter of encouragement. An original thinker, at the time of thinking, is utterly unmindful of whether or not he'll be acknowledged. If ever that thought crosses his mind, he'll stop thinking. He thinks just as a celebration of his own being. He thinks in order to fully encounter, express himself. He thinks because he knows that what he is at the present time is nowhere near what he can be. And also that the species to which he belongs can go thousands of miles more. So we are in process, and therefore as a responsible member of the species, we need to enrich this shared journey. That is how we are thinking. Whether we are recognized in the process or not. In fact, original thinkers always know, if not at the time of thinking, prior to this and after that, they always know that there is huge risk. That's why I included this in my presentation also. No original thinker has been accepted easily by anyone. Because as I said 3 months ago, every society is organized on the principle of preserving the status quo. Original thinking will always be experienced as a subversive force because it disturbs the status quo. You can't stay where you are and go forward at the same time. This is the reason why all original thinkers have had a tough time. There are two aspects to this process. One is, how do you exorcise the spirit of the past? How do you wring out the past? Second is, how do you ring in the new? Both are equally difficult. But both need to be done. That's the basic duty we owe to ourselves and to the species. But when we say wring out the past, it doesn't mean everything about the past, as I made very clear in my main presentation. It means those underdeveloped aspects of our understanding, thinking, progress in the past on which we need to build further. The foundations must remain. Okay? So it is like a bud becoming a flower. Okay? The flower becoming a seed. The seed becoming a sapling. The sapling becoming a tree. The tree producing a flower. The flower becoming a fruit. The fruit becoming a seed. That process, that's called?
Sir, but there is also a question of, other than the encouragement part, there is question of anchoring in thinking. Because if somebody is thinking, say for example, as young as me or inexperienced as me, so I should be told whether I am on the right path or the wrong path of thinking, which is the path of the responsible thinking and creative thinking.
No, that's fine. See, acknowledgement doesn't mean that. This is called guidance or mentoring a person. Now, this mentoring or this guidance takes place in 2 or 3 different ways. One, it can happen in an interpersonal fashion. For example, in our traditional way of life, parents were mentors to us, grandparents, elders in the family, etc. Now, that way, every family had its own tradition. We talked about family tradition. No one talks about family tradition now. It's gone. We have discarded it. The other way of mentoring, the other way of guidance is what is called tradition itself. Tradition is the accumulated experience and wisdom of a long period of human struggle upon this earth. It has a lot of things to give to us. At the same time, it is not complete because life is still an unfolding process. Okay? Then you have, in addition to this, you have various provisions like education, like printed literature and so on and so forth. You have religion. So all this together may constitute a somewhat adequate matrix or context for your guidance, but it will never be sufficient. Especially if you are becoming an original thinker, all of these will help, but they will never be sufficient. Because you have to be you are a little ahead of the society all the time. There's an old saying that if you are 1 step ahead of the pack, you are a leader. If you're 10 steps ahead, you become a martyr. Society will kill you. Okay? So that risk is something that I've already referred to. We have to accept it. The craving for popularity is always a killer of thinking, genuine thinking, right? Okay.
Yeah. So, in the common parlance, we believe that energy, positive energy or negative energy, has influence on our thinking. And will you please enlighten with some illustrations? How does it actually influences? And if it influences, to what extent it influences our thinking?
The illustration that I gave of Muhammad Yunus is a good enough illustration. See, the bank managers thought about these poor women only in negative terms, that they will never repay the loan. Muhammad Yunus said, no, they will be honest. He said they will be more honest and regular, trustworthy in their repayment of loans than the rich people. And he not only said this, he demonstrated it through his own action by putting his hands into his own pocket and giving the money, his personal funds. That is what is called positive thinking. Right? Now there are certain people who cannot see any opportunity, any possibility in any situation. I got the car porch here renovated. Here, if you can see that. A person saw it. His first reaction is, oh, it will just break. A car will come, it will break. It's not true. Even if it breaks, so what? For the time being, it looks nice, no? But that's not the way people think. Immediately, 100 reasons why it should not have been done. That is not thinking. It is simply a public display of one's habit, mental habit. Most people do only this kind of activities. That is the reason why they waste all their opportunities. And the proof that they have wasted opportunities is that they will always blame others. If at all, if you ever come across somebody who begins to blame others, run away from that person. Huh? That's right. That person is utterly negative. And instead of accepting one's own responsibility for failing in life, he has a compulsive neurotic need to apportion blame to somebody else. He'll be looking for a scapegoat. Such people are pestilences. I'm sorry to say. There are too many of them in our times. Right?
How to handle
tell rather how to...
The first thing is, we must accept responsibility. If something has gone wrong, I am responsible. If something goes wrong in St. Stephen's College, I am responsible. You know, you will see, for example, that some politician will make a statement and he will turn out to be a bloomer. And when people begin to make it, he will say, no, I did not say this, I was misquoted by the media. No, the media has videographed you. Huh? The soundtrack is available. You are seen as saying the stupid thing yourself. But you say, no, the media has got it wrong. No, I have got it wrong. You remember when I said, when I shocked the whole of India by saying I am Dawood Ibrahim? Then people thought that I'll say, no, I am misquoted. Then I wrote a piece for NDTV on their request. The article, if you remember, began like this. I want to make one thing very clear. I was not misquoted. This is exactly what I said. That's how I began that piece. So the first thing we have to do is accept responsibility for who one is, what one's predicament is, what one has done. Why? If you don't do that, you will never improve. If you accept responsibility, you break out of the cycle. If you don't, you repeat the same cycle. And that's called a prison. Intellectually, that's called a prison. Right? So, negativity is the necessary condition, inescapable condition of that kind of way of life. It is not such a big deal. You can do it. For example, I'll give you an exercise. You write a short story, not to be published. You do this exercise today. A short story of 1 page, mainly describing a situation. Put it aside. Tomorrow, take it up and read it, looking at the negative expressions in your writing and the negative way in which you have seen that situation. Then rewrite the story, turning the negatives to positives. It will be a very good experience for you. Try this out. And it's incredible how negative we are. We have not realized it. So negative. Any other? I'll have to also close because my throat is protesting. I'll take one more question. Arundhati wanted to ask. Yes, yes. Give her the phone.
So we were discussing about courage to accept risks, and then we discussed that people who travel on a less traversed path are basically following that not risk-free route. I am thinking like it is quite possible that I am looking at a path in some way and the rest of the people are looking at it in a different way. So maybe there are not 2 paths, it may be just one path. One person looking at it in a different way and the rest of them looking at it in some other way.
Arundhati, it is not a question of other people looking. It's a question of yourself looking at a situation in terms of 2 options. Any human situation will have at least 2 options. There is no situation imaginable with only one option. Then the question is, which of the 2 options will you choose? Will you choose this option A because it is easier and because it is risk-free, even though it is like, tepid water? Or will you choose option B, even though it looks difficult and fraught with some serious consequences? Let me give an illustration. 1914, the first expedition to the South Pole reached their destination. It was a 5-member team under the leadership of a British Army captain called Captain Scott. After reaching the South Pole and unfurling the flag, they were returning to the base camp. One of the members of the team, Petty Officer Evans, was taken ill. You can imagine the harsh conditions. Almost murderous temperature. All the 5 of them exposed to blizzard, snowstorm, rarefied oxygen, difficult to breathe. Under those extreme difficult conditions, Captain Scott was faced with a very difficult choice. The options were very clear to him. Either to abandon Petty Officer Evans to his cold, lonely depths in the blizzard, or to carry him and risk the survival of the other 4. Very clear choice. Captain Scott decided not to abandon his teammate to the blizzard and lonely death. No one really knows what happened. But several months later, their dead bodies were found 3 or 4 kilometers from the base camp. Now the point is this. It's only a matter of chance that Petty Officer Evans fell ill. It could have been Captain Scott. It could have been some other member of the team. If you develop a culture of abandoning people for your convenience, today it is the chance of Petty Officer Evans, tomorrow it will be your chance. On the streets of Delhi, victims of street accidents will lie bleeding. No one will stop or look at him or her. They don't realize what Captain Scott realized. It's my turn today, tomorrow it's your turn. Now this is what is called thinking. Thinking, accepting the risk. And our life will become very cheap if we are not willing to accept